God commanded me to do horrible things to children. My name is Albert Fish and this is my story. I was born on May 19, 1870, in Washington, D.C., into a family plagued by mental illness. My father had a fatal heart attack when I was just 5 years old. My mother decided to place me in St. John's Orphanage in Washington, where I endured frequent physical abuse. It was during my time at the orphanage that I began to develop a twisted fascination with pain. I found myself deriving pleasure from the beatings I received. Around the age of 12, I formed a relationship with a telegraph boy who introduced me to perverse practices such as drinking urine and consuming feces. At the age of 20, I moved to New York City, where I engaged in male prostitution and began preying on young boys, particularly those under 6 years old. I subjected them to unspeakable acts of molestation and rape, fueled by my sadistic desires. In 1910, while working in Wilmington, Delaware, I met a young man named Thomas Kedden, with whom I formed a sadomasochistic relationship. For 10 days, I subjected Kedden to a horrifying ordeal in an old farmhouse. The torment escalated until I eventually severed half of his penis, forever haunting me with the memory of his screams and desperate gaze. After that, I chose to pour peroxide over his wound, wrapped it in a Vaseline-covered handkerchief, left him a $10 bill, kissed him goodbye, and departed without knowing his ultimate fate. My masochism led to indulging in self-harm, embedding needles into my groin and abdomen. I also hit myself repeatedly with a nail-studded paddle, and inserted wool doused with lighter fluid into my anus and set it alight. I also hit myself repeatedly with a nail-studded paddle, and inserted wool doused with lighter fluid into my anus and set it alight. In 1919, I stabbed an intellectually disabled boy in Georgetown. I deliberately targeted black and disabled people, whom I believed would not be missed if they were killed. Armed with my implements of hell, including a meat cleaver, a butcher knife, and a small handsaw, I continued to torture, mutilate, and murder young children. By 1924, at the age of 54, I had descended into psychosis, convinced that God commanded me to inflict unspeakable pain and sexual mutilation upon innocent children. It was during this time that I came across a classified advertisement in the New York World, placed by a young man named Edward Budd. I hatched a plan to lure him, tie him up, and watch him bleed to death. However, fate intervened, and I found myself in the presence of Edward's 10-year-old sister, Grace Budd. Quickly altering my sinister intentions, I fabricated a story about a birthday party and persuaded Grace's parents to let her accompany me. Little did they know that I had chosen an abandoned house known as Wisteria Cottage as the location for my next vile act. There, I ended the young girl's life and consumed her flesh. The trial for the murder of Grace Budd began in 1935. Throughout the proceedings, I pleaded insanity, claiming to hear voices from God commanding me to kill children. Despite no doubts about my insanity, the jurors felt compelled to ensure justice was served. They found me guilty and sane, leading to my sentencing of death by electrocution.